This is still within the same story. However, these are updates we're getting you from the Enforcement Directorate. What we're learning, as you might remember, that the ED spoke yesterday and had an entire investigative process and interrogation with Sanjay Raut. We're learning during those searches yesterday at his house, the ED says, or it claims to have found a number of different documents. These are property documents. These properties were earlier not in the knowledge of the ED. The ED is badly trying to ascertain whether the properties are Benami or not. Now, my colleague Ashish Maharishi, who covers the Enforcement Directorate, is with us. We have him. Let's go over to him for an explanation. Ashish, if you could just break down for our audiences, because we use this word Benami when talking about the ED often. Could you tell us exactly what Benami means in this context? Could you also tell us what properties has the ED already got knowledge of, and what do these documents increase that tally to?
So there have been certain properties which have been on the radar of Enforcement Directorate, reason being that the Enforcement Directorate believes these properties have been acquired through proceeds of crime, which is basically money from the scam related to the Patra Chawl. But here they have found certain more properties which are basically which are not in the knowledge of Enforcement Directorate. So Enforcement Directorate officers, basically they have been working hard since yesterday. They do not have absolute details as of now whether it is Benami or not. Benami is basically a property which is basically you bought it in somebody else's name and the papers are always with you. It may be in the name of your driver or your servant or anybody. So here the Enforcement Directorate is trying to basically find out whether the properties are Benami in nature or not. That is what they are trying to ascertain. But as of now, there certainly these properties were not in the knowledge of the Enforcement Directorate. That I can confirm to you. In an hour or so, we can maybe tell our viewers whether these properties are Benami or not. But
all right, we seem to have lost our connection with my colleague Ashish Maharishi over there. We'll try to re-establish that connection. But let's talk a little bit more about the political significance of Sanjay Raut. He was a prime mover as he convinced the Shiv Sena, remember, a few years ago, to choose its ideological rivals and form a government without the BJP all the way back in 2019. He's one of the key reasons why the Maharashtra Vikas Aghadi even got formed. His political impact, political footprint in Maharashtra is huge. But let's go back to my colleague Ashish Maharishi to discuss the Enforcement Directorate angle in this entire story. Ashish, we lost our connection to you. You were explaining to our audiences what Benami properties are. Could you go ahead?
So the Benami properties are basically properties which could be in the name of your servant or your driver or anybody, but not in your name. But the money that would have been spent would have come through you. So that is what the property is, which are Benami in nature, are supposed to be. It should be the transactions are in that manner. But here we don't know whether the properties are Benami or not. But these are properties which were certainly not in the knowledge of Enforcement Directorate earlier. Enforcement Directorate is trying to ascertain who are the people behind these properties, and in case it is found to be legitimate, then obviously there is no questions asked from Sanjay Raut or from his family members. But as of now, these properties documents are being seriously looked at by Enforcement Directorate. As we speak, what have been told by my sources in the Enforcement Directorate is that they are basically looking at 10-day custody. That is what they are going to ask for in the court. So it's going to be very interesting for how many days the Enforcement Directorate gets the custody of Sanjay Raut, because that is going to be very important because they have to establish the entire scam and the role of Sanjay Raut and his family members. They have to file a charge sheet in the case, and for that charge sheet they need to establish his culpability in the entire scam. So that is what the Enforcement Directorate is going to look at. They're going to look at maximum. They're going to look at maximum number of days for the custody of Sanjay Raut, and let's see what the court does. How many days of custody is granted to ED by the court. That's going to be really important.
Ashish, if you could also explain to our audiences what is typically the legal process involved here. Is Sanjay Raut under the legal obligation to have revealed already to the ED all the property that he owns?
That is the normal course, because when you file your income tax return, you have to tell what all properties you own, what is the wealth that you have, if there is any wealth tax or not, whether you are under how you have bought those properties. You have to quote your PAN, everything. When you buy any property, then there is a proper legal process that needs to be followed. Here they have found certain property documents. We don't know whether it is Benami or not. Certainly we can't claim as of now. In an hour or so maybe we can tell, but property documents are being looked at very seriously, and these properties were earlier not in the knowledge of enforcement.
Okay. Ashish, thank you for bringing us those details. For our audiences